And the angel says in verse 6, you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. Of course, that's who's supposed to be here. He is risen. Oh, we'll get to that. He is risen. He is not here. All right, so we have love one another. We have it is finished. And we have it, he is risen. He is risen became a battle cry for the early church. It became a battle cry. The message that Jesus Christ was no longer in the grave. In fact, Christians were kind of being persecuted for 300 years. They were being hunted down and killed by the Romans. They didn't want the Christians because the Christians were growing too fast. The church was exploding. People were accepting Christ all over, and they wanted Caesar to be the king. And these people were saying Jesus was a king. And there was a big problem. And so they would take these Christians and they would throw them in the middle of an arena and turn wild animals loose on them. And they'd be ripping them apart. And while they're doing that, the Christians were singing. It drove the Romans nuts. Couldn't figure out why these people weren't screaming and recanting and turning away. They were singing and shouting, he is risen, because they knew that it was finished. They were going to be with him. Nero, you remember, had a great plan. He tied Christians to posts along his walkway and at night lit them on fire. Let them burn to death. Only the problem was, while they were burning, they were singing. Drove him nuts. He didn't, well, and it did drive him nuts, really. But he did. Nobody talks about Nero these days. I mean, when somebody gets upset, they never say, oh, Nero. Everybody talks about Jesus, even when they get upset. They talk about Jesus. I mean, Jesus has outlasted everybody. And this truth comes through. These Christians would say, he is risen, and another Christian would say, he is risen indeed. And that's where that came from, and we say that today. Shall we practice it? He is risen. He is risen indeed. That's good. That's how we did it, and that's how we've done it for 2,000 years. What amazing words those are. He is risen means that Jesus is who he said he was. Nobody could walk out of a grave. You don't know anybody that's walked out of a grave. I don't think you plan to walk out of a grave. We can't. It's impossible. But Jesus did it because he's God. And he says that he's God. In John, we read that he says, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. I and the Father are one. He's the living God. We don't have to go to a building to find him. We don't have to go to a shrine. We don't have to go to a temple. We don't have to go to an altar or a statue. He lives within us. He is the living God. He is alive. He's exactly who he said he was. And we can do that. We can believe him. Second thing is, he is risen means that we can believe what he said. Not only who he was, but what he said. He said he was going to come out of that tomb. See what the angel said in verse 7? He is not here. He is risen. Go tell his disciples, you will see him in Galilee just as he told you. You can believe what Jesus said. Because he said he was going to come out of the grave, and he came out. If I told you, hey guys, I'll be back after I die, anybody believe me? Nobody, because it's impossible. But Jesus did it. You can believe him. So when Jesus says to you, my peace I'm going to give to you. I'm going to give it to you. My peace. The peace that saw me through all the tough times, I'm going to just give it to you. It's not like the world gives it. It's a different kind of peace. It's going to be a deep peace inside of you. So you don't have to ever be afraid, and you don't have to ever be troubled over things. And by the way, if you're ever frustrated and fed up with things are getting to you in a terrible way, just call on me, and I will give you rest. I will do, You know why I do that? Because, and again he says, I'll never leave you and I'll never forsake you. I will be with you as long as you live. Now he says this to us and we can believe him because he is risen. Tells us that. Isn't that amazing? All those things Jesus says that you think, well, that's for somebody else, not for me, it's for you. In the book of Acts, there are 13 sermons preached. 7 by Paul, 5 by Peter, and 1 by Stephen. And all of them have a basic theme. Jesus is alive, and he can change your life. That's the basic theme of he is risen. And if you haven't experienced the change that Jesus can bring you to your life, we would love to help you experience that and help you learn what that is. He created you. He knows exactly why, and he wants to help you to be the person you were created to be. It is finished, so you don't have to pay any debt if you receive him and let him do the changing. He is alive means that there's hope. There's hope for all of us. There's a purpose for our life. We're not just struggling through life. We're not just limping along trying to figure out how we can get from one place to another. There's a purpose for us and a reason for us to live. The disciples discovered that almost immediately. He tells them in verse 15 of chapter 16 to now go and tell other people that he's alive, that he is risen. And they do that. Matthew goes down to Ethiopia. Peter goes up to Rome. The fisherman goes up to Rome. His brother Andrew goes up to Ukraine, tells those people. In fact, there's a cathedral in Kiev that is the Cathedral of Andrew. There's, Philip went up into the Black Sea. Thomas went over to India, and in India, you will find a cathedral that's to St. Thomas. Thaddeus went up into Iraq. Simon the Zealot, the disciples, Simon went down into Africa. I mean, these guys all went, some of them, most of them died because people were trying to stamp out Christianity. And most of them died with that word on their mouth. He is risen. They refused to back away. Some people said, you're lying. You're just trying to make money off of this. You're just trying to be famous. They died to keep that truth alive. They died. There's purpose for your life. There's meaning for you. God's going to use you to do amazing things. He has broken the curse of death for all of us. That's what he is risen means to me. Oh, I know I'm going to die someday, probably sooner than most of you. But do you know what? I'm going to skirt right through that thing. I'm going to come out the other side. Yeah, you'll say, oh, he died, but I won't be dead by the time you say that. You'll be too late. So when my funeral comes along, you just celebrate that I'm alive. And I'm alive in an amazing place. I'm alive in a place that God is prepared especially for me. And because I made a choice to accept the fact that he paid my bill on the cross, I'm going to live eternally with him. Now that's a choice I had to make. If I didn't make that choice, eternity doesn't look nearly as good. And then death is really bad. But for me, I know where I'm going because he is risen. He is risen is a destiny for all of us.